And it looks like we're live. The Jazz played the Spurs tonight. I'm guessing you know that because you saw the video title. And the Jazz won. It was a 130 to 109 victory for the Jazz. The Spurs were a little shorthanded. I think they had two key players missing. One of those players was LaMarcus Aldridge, so he's probably their second, maybe third best player, depending on the night. So that is definitely a key loss for the Spurs. Other than that, there's not a ton of it was a pretty normal game other than those injuries, and I feel like there's not a lot that we can learn about the Jazz from this game. It was a great victory. The Jazz were ahead almost the whole time. The Jazz got off to a fast start, took the lead early. Around halftime, the Spurs came back and made it close, but then once it got into the second half, the Spurs really didn't have a chance. The key player for the Jazz, obviously Mitchell, he did his thing, got 20 plus points, but Bojan, he killed it tonight. He had 28 points, I believe. He was 10 for 13 from the field and 6 for 7 from three. So, and watching the game, he was confident. He had some open shots, obviously, and I think he got started a little early with some easy shots. But down the stretch, like if he had any room, he would just shoot the three and it would go in. So I loved seeing that. That was one of those things where he's just hot. I don't know if that's a sign of he can keep this up. I wouldn't expect that from him. I think it's just the Spurs were kind of lazy today. It felt like they didn't have a lot of energy, but neither did the Jazz. But when Bojan was on offense, he took advantage of that. They were slow on the closeouts. They were not like staying tight on him on defense. They were giving him enough room to get the shot off, and he was taking them and they were falling. So great for him. I loved seeing what the Jazz were doing on offense once they got set into their offense. They were efficient. They were shooting above 50% from the field. Donovan Mitchell, I think he was one shot under 500 for field goal percentage, which I'll take for him. If he's in the high 40s for the season, I'm happy with that, since one concern that we've been seeing early on with him is a low efficiency. So I'd love to see his field goal percentage get up a little closer to that mid 40s to high 40s range. But I don't know what we can take away from this Jazz win other than that they shot well. The Spurs, they're obviously not a good team. We had a tough time against the Spurs last year, and I think that's I don't know what was going on in those games. The Spurs just killed us from mid-range last season, and they were doing the same this game, but I don't know. I don't know what was going on. Both teams looked a little lazy, a little slow. The Jazz definitely. I think I talked on a few games back. I don't remember which game it was, but I'm still seeing a lot of lazy, sloppy passes from the Jazz. That the Jazz, I've noticed that once they get in a rhythm on offense, that they feel, okay, we can hit shots. They kind of start getting comfortable, and they just say, okay, like I'll just pass the ball here and not really think about what the defense is doing, and they don't really have their head in the game, which is something concerning. It's something that I don't think is like killer. Like I don't think it's going to wreck the Jazz down the stretch. I think it's something that they'll figure out. It's something that once they get into the heat of the season and kind of get back into their full rhythm as a team, I believe they'll fix it. But if they don't, that is a major concern. I saw both. For most of the season, I've been seeing Ingles make most of the dumb passes, but I've saw a little bit from everyone. Clarkson made a couple pretty close to each other. So I don't like seeing that. That like preventable turnovers are a killer, especially when you're playing tight games. Now, this wasn't a tight game, so the Jazz were still able to blow out the Spurs, which is great. I'll take the win. But they're playing the Nets next game. And if that could be the difference, if they have 4 or 5 passes that were preventable, but they just threw them away, that could be the difference maker against a team like the Nets, where the Nets have firepower. The Nets, like, you have to bring your A game against teams like those that have multiple superstars. And so that's something that is concerning. Like I said, I don't think it's not me pointing the finger at the Jazz saying this is the reason why they can't become champions. But I do think that it's something that they need to recognize. And it's one of those things where this is something that is a problem for, like, I guess in sports is easier on film, but really anything that you're doing, you can say, especially when it's something like sports where it's fast paced in the moment, when you're sitting back reviewing it, looking at film, when I'm sitting on the couch watching the game, I can see what they're doing. I have a better view of the court than they do because it's a little overhead. And when they're watching film, I'm sure they recognize that plus a lot more than I do. But it's one of those things where you have to train yourself because you can't pause in the game and say, "Oh, is this a good pass? Do I have a better pass?" Because if you take that much time, either you get the ball stolen because you're thinking about something else, you're not in the game, or all the good passes are covered because the defense has enough time to fix it. So it's something that's easier said than done to fix. But I do think the Jazz have a good coach in Quinn Snyder, and they have high IQ players that won't only recognize it on film, but will figure out ways that they can apply that into the game. So, and I'm not going to kill them for it. This game, they were ahead by a lot. I'm sure when you're up by 20 points, you're just, it's not as fun to play. You're not as into it as you would be a tighter game. So I have seen it in other games. It's not the worst thing ever, but I want them to stop. I want to stop seeing those and cut them down to one, maybe two a game at most coming up. Other than that, the Jazz, like I said, it was low energy. I don't know if that is just they were ahead the whole time, so they didn't want to wear themselves out. They know they're on a road trip. They have this is the first of their 7-game road trip and 11-day period, so that's a lot of games really close to each other. Maybe they were thinking about that. Maybe it was a strategy and not just them being low energy. But I have seen them be low energy in the past, so another thing to tie in. And those low energy games were in losses. So I know I'm sounding kind of negative for a win. We should be excited that the Jazz took this win. They're still in the top half. I think this win puts them in the top half of the Western Conference. I may be wrong. I don't pay very much attention to standings until we're about 20, 25 games into the season because, you get teams like the Suns are number one in the West, which if that continues, that would be a crazy run for them, but I expect them to drop down more into that 4, 5, 6 range here in about 10 games or so. But that being said, I don't know if we can really take much away from this game as far as what to expect from the Jazz in the future. They got off to a hot start, which is great. We have been seeing them be a little less confident, but at the same time, the Spurs, I just watching them, it looked like they came into the game knowing they would lose. So the Spurs almost handed the game to the Jazz. They gave them the hot start. It felt like. So if the Jazz and like getting off to a hot start is a lot different than fighting from behind, like the Jazz have been doing in previous games this season. So like you do play differently, you think differently. So I'm interested to hear what everyone has, like what your key takeaways from this game are, because I'm a little stumped as far as what we can learn for the Jazz going forward. We know that Bojan had a hot game. We're hoping to see a lot more of those this season. We saw some good play from Mitchell. His shot was falling tonight. This is one thing that I have noticed this season, and this isn't like to say that Mitchell was a bad shooter in his past seasons. He was inefficient, and he still is a little this season. But just looking at his jump shot, it looks a little smoother than it has in the past. Now his jump shot is a lot better than like I was watching college basketball yesterday and some of their jumpers are are weird. I don't know, like they have so many movements. Like if you listen to shooting coaches, the the main rule for a good shot is you want to go straight up and you want the release to be one fluid movement, which Mitchell does exactly. His feet stay pretty straight; they're not tilted or off one way. He lands straight. His shot just goes. And you see other players like in college, and a lot of these college players come into the NBA like this, and they get it. They have to move the ball to where they need to. They get it up over their shoulder and then release like the Carlos Boozer shot. So that's one thing that I have high hopes for Mitchell that he will become a much better jump shooter than he is now, and I think we'll start seeing that more even later on in this season. So that may be me just trying to grab something because I'm not sure if I can say something definitively from this game. It was an awesome win. I'll take it. I think the Jazz started off the road trip how they should. They need to keep it going. They have a tough game next up against the Nets. So I think the Jazz they can win this game. It is going to be tough for them though because, like I said, in past games this season, we've been seeing slightly less energy from them. We've been seeing some silly mistakes on offense where they just make passes that they really shouldn't have been making. So the Jazz need to make sure they play tighter, and I'm sure they'll come into the game tighter because they know this is a big one. They're playing Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. I haven't heard of any injuries for that game, so uh, if you guys have heard something, let me know. I'd that could be a difference maker if a major player on the Nets is out. So I'm excited for this Nets game. It's going to be exciting. It's like going to be exciting to see how the Jazz manage a team with several superstars that have been playing really well so far this season. Um, so that's about it. The Another note: this isn't like huge for the future of the Jazz this season, but we were able to see a deeper bench because the Jazz were ahead. So we were able to see some of the rookies come in. Azubuike got a few minutes. He was 1 for 2. We got Shaq Harrison. He's not a rookie, but he's a new signing. He came in, got 6 points. He was a -10 on plus minus, but I'm not going to put that against him. It was probably garbage time where the Jazz were ahead. And I'm pretty sure he was mostly in with lineup of other people lower on the bench. But that was fun to see. Elijah Hughes came in for 6 minutes. He wasn't able to score. He got a block though, so good for him. Other than that, I don't know um, how much to take away from this game. I feel like I've said that 15 times. So sorry about that. I was trying to pick some stuff out. I said some stuff at the beginning, but I feel like I'm repeating myself now. Where it's low energy. But then this game, the benefits were in the past. I was saying like the 4 main hits I've had on the Jazz so far this season are at times they're low energy, they're inefficient scores, not overall, but it's almost they're streaky as a whole team, especially Donovan Mitchell. I've also been seeing sloppy passing, and I've been seeing them starting out slow. So this game, they started off strong. That and the past few games, I've been seeing that as well. So I'm hoping those butterflies are kind of out and they can start strong for the rest of the season. And they were really efficient this game. Hopefully that gives them some of their confidence back that they can start hitting those threes and being on the outside. Um, I think that's pretty good. That's about it. Tune in next time after the Nets game. We'll have a post game review. Nate will be on, and I haven't been paying attention to the comments. So I'll take a quick look through there. I'll probably trim this part off for the actual video that ends up published, but it will show up for a little bit because it doesn't come off immediately. But yeah, so Shaq Harrison, he came, Yeah, I mentioned him. He came in strong. He had the -10, so uh, good for that. Yeah, awesome win for the Jazz. They blew them out. Um, a comment just came in from Matthew Beckstead. He said, "What players on the Jazz will make the All Star game?" Obviously, best chances are Mitchell and Gobert. They've been players that made it in the past. I think Mitchell is pretty close to a lock for the All Star game at this point. I wouldn't be surprised if Gobert kind of falls off. Voters don't love players like Gobert for All Star game because he's not showy. He averages less than 20 points, but we've talked in videos in the past that what Gobert does doesn't show up in the box score as much as it does for other players. So I wouldn't be surprised if Gobert is left out. I would love to see Bojan at least get some consideration for votes. Obviously, with how he's been playing so far this season, he's not at that level. He could be if he continues games like this, where he's scoring in the 20s every night on crazy efficiency, like 6 or 7 from three. And Conley has had some good games. I don't expect him to carry that throughout the season, but he's had some all-star level games. So I think the Jazz have several players that are all-star caliber, but if I were to bet on it, I would probably bet only Mitchell because he's the kind of player that voters favor. And that's not me saying that Gobert isn't worthy of an all-star game. I just would say people tend to undervalue him. But do I think Clarkson will be the sixth man of the year? I don't know. He is an early favorite right now. I think he will be a finalist. It's really tough to tell right now because sixth man of the year is something that people don't really think about, and it especially right at the beginning of the season. So sixth man of the year is it's one of those story awards where it's almost the person who comes off the bench with the most heart. That's why Montrezl Harrell came in and won it last season. So I think Jordan Clarkson should be a finalist if he keeps up this level of play. I think he should earn it. If you're a bench player coming off the bench, like if you're a sixth man coming off the bench, scoring like 15 to 18 points per game, and you really keep the offense alive when you're on the court and the starters are out, like 100% you earn the sixth man of the year. But I don't know, maybe there's another sixth man who comes out and scores like a starter, but they just decide to keep him on the bench because of the rotation. So I don't know. It's tough to tell right now. We're less than 10 games in. But yeah, I'm happy about the win. The Jazz are 4-2 now. They are 3-0 this season on the road, which hopefully that continues for the next 6 games because we have 6 more games on the road before the next home game. So we have the Nets, Knicks, and Bucks coming up. Tune in for those. And I'll end this now, but the video will be posted. Keep the comments going, and we'll have a conversation in the comments down there. So that will be great. But that's it. Thanks for tuning in. Hit a like on the video if you haven't already. Subscribe if you haven't. And if you have any friends who are Jazz fans who don't watch our channel, make sure to share it with them because we're going to keep on putting up good Jazz videos. We're going to try to review every game, and at least once a week we're putting out a couple videos just reviewing what we've seen from the Jazz so far and what we're expecting in the next 10 to 15 games or so. But thanks. Don't forget to comment. I'll be on there and we can have a conversation down there. Thanks for tuning in.